Does the medical trauma, particularly reproductive trauma that women experience in the American healthcare system, radicalize us for the alt-right? Somebody posited this in my comments a couple of days ago, and I cannot stop thinking about it. Particularly when it comes to reproductive trauma that folks experience when they're pregnant and giving birth, the denial of our bodily autonomy, the violation that most of us experience in the American healthcare system when we're pregnant and in labor and postpartum, the dismissal and dehumanization, the PTSD that we have. Does that radicalize folks for the alt-right? Let me walk you through the connections to see if it makes sense to you. Like, it keeps stewing around in my brain and it feels like a plausible hypothesis to me. I'm not sure it's possible to be a woman in America and not have medical trauma. Having your health concerns, your symptoms dismissed because you are, probably just hormonal. Your concerns not taken seriously because you're a woman, even more so if you are a fat woman. But it's exponentially worse during pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum. Whatever autonomy we had, whatever self-direction we had in our own healthcare choices suddenly becomes inconsequential in the face of the fact that we are incubating another human. And so the medical establishment, especially male physicians, justify doing all kinds of shit to us without our consent. Most of it unnecessary and far more about their convenience than the safety of us and the child that we're carrying. I think for the vast majority of people in America, birth is trauma, and it doesn't have to be that way. Not that natural, unmedicated childbirth in a non-medicalized setting isn't obligatorily, not traumatic. Absolutely, it can be. But the pain and honestly suffering of childbirth is exacerbated. The trauma of that experience is exacerbated when we, at our most vulnerable, have all kinds of things done to us without consent. Birth trauma, reproductive trauma is also sexual trauma. It's medical trauma. It gives us PTSD. So hear me out here. Because of that, folks become very fearful of Western medicine, antagonistic toward Western medicine. Rightly so, angry at, suspicious of the establishment that has harmed them, often with lasting psychological and physical consequences. And that pushes folks toward alternative spheres. This came out of a conversation where we were talking about crunchy moms in particular, but any kind of alternative living that seeks to offer a kind of fringe counter narrative. I think especially ones that are trying to appeal to white women who are dissatisfied with our own cultural experience and feel traumatized by it. Those become conduits, pipelines for the alt-right. So not only is the patriarchy denying the bodily autonomy of women, traumatizing women, violating women's consent within the medical sphere, particularly around childbirth, but then that patriarchal, paternalistic, controlling mindset creates trauma that pushes those women to alternative spheres, to fringe spaces, where their fear of the medical establishment becomes a fear of science, becomes a search for woo-tastic solutions, where it breeds distrust and also conspiracy theories, and radicalizes people for the alt-right, for white supremacy, for tradwifery. Like, we as women are being harmed by the patriarchal oppressive nature of our for-profit healthcare system. And instead of that being the spark that leads to our liberation and reforming our society, tearing down the patriarchy, tearing down white supremacy, it becomes something that pushes, I think, white moms especially, through a circuitous route they don't realize what's happening to them, pushes them into conspiracy theory alt-right spaces, and ultimately radicalizes them to be a weapon to uphold the patriarchy and white supremacy. I don't know, what do y'all think about that? Does that make sense to other people? And if so, what the hell do we do about it? So you're very intelligent. What crunchy rules did you abide by? Do you still believe any of it? Okay, this was on a video where I said that I no longer use the label crunchy. I haven't for quite a while. I left all of the crunchy mom groups years ago. I think there were a significant number of ways that I never fit in with crunchy culture, and I kind of was like on the down low about it a little bit. I said this before, but I am the granddaughter, daughter, and sister of physicians. My brother's a biochemist. My degree is in biology. We're a very pro-science family. So I've always been very pro-Western medicine and very pro-vaccine. That's created friction in a lot of my relationships with other crunchy moms, especially ones who, go to chiropractors and practice homeopathy, ones who believe in a lot of woo that I just don't ascribe to at all. As for the crunchy things I did do and believe, do I believe any of them now? I think basically all of them. I just don't want to call myself crunchy. I still believe in extended breastfeeding. I still believe in natural childbirth, cloth diapering, co-sleeping safely, growing your own food, baking, canning, preserving, making lacto-fermented pickles, making my own yogurt, reducing my use of plastic, reducing my consumption altogether, trying to reduce, reuse, recycle, mend, and repair whenever possible, using natural fibers whenever possible, rejecting consumerism, trying to live simply within my means. Now, this is only for left-leaning crunchies, not ones down the alt-right pipeline, but my parenting practices are still the same. Non-authoritarian, respectful parenting. I respect my kids' bodily autonomy. I'm anti-circumcision. I don't hit my children. I let them make decisions about their own bodies, how they want to modify them, how they want to present them to the public, the clothes that they wear, the way they do their hair. I don't believe in punishment or grounding. We unschool our children. Well, I unschool one still. The 3 eldest are all college students now. Trying to live a slow and intentional life that is connected to nature and connected to the people that I love and care for, connected to my community. My permaculture practice, which ties into that very seamlessly, all of that I still practice. I never bought into any of the conspiracy theories or anti-science nonsense that began to proliferate in crunchy spaces when I was there. And ultimately, I think it's why I had so much friction with so many other people and left those spaces, was that I just couldn't tolerate it. I was deeply troubled by a lot of the very anti-science, anti-medicine practices that I felt were causing harm to kids, be it anti-vax or raw milk, or refusing to engage with Western medicine at all, putting kids on weird orthorexic diets. I think I found myself being very bitter and snarky. I was like grumbling to my husband a lot that some of my mutuals felt like they were in essential oil cults, buying into crazy conspiracy theories like ancient aliens, using clean eating as a way to justify their orthorexia. Yeah, it all just became too much for me, so I left. But those initial values and beliefs that I held that overlapped with the crunchy sphere, I think I probably still hold all of those. I think this is such a good point. All of the aspects of being crunchy that I described in my video that I said that I still hold on to, ecological extended breastfeeding, baby wearing, co-sleeping, natural childbirth. Commenter said, I think all of that is normal to most immigrant communities because that's normal day-to-day life in those countries, right? The fact that that's odd here is odd to me. Such a good point. So many parts of crunchy culture that are, in my opinion, the good parts of it, that are seen as fringe, even radical, to the white, Western, individualistic mindset, are just normal life, normal culture for people all over the world and for immigrant communities in America. I'm going to talk about orthorexia and disordered eating in the crunchy mom community, in veganism, and how both of those groups and skinny culture all funnel into the alt-right. So consider this your content warning and scroll away if this is a subject that you don't want to be listening to. I also want to make it really clear, I'm not an expert in this area. I am going to talk about my lived experience being a crunchy mom for many, many years. But I'm speaking anecdotally and off the cuff after several folks asked me if I would talk about my thoughts on this issue. I made a video which is pinned at the top of my profile about being a crunchy mom and the crunchy to alt-right pipeline. And that video got a shit ton of views and tons of feedback and comments from folks who were also crunchy moms. And many, many of those comments confirmed what I said in that video about how crunchy culture perpetuates orthorexia. And I said, well, that makes sense because there's the crunchy to alt-right pipeline, but also skinny culture is a tool of the patriarchy and white supremacy used to control women. So here's what I saw in crunchy culture, right? There is a lot of emphasis on right eating, on clean eating. And don't get me wrong, I'm a really big locavore. I'm really into growing my own food, focusing on, seasonal eating and, high nutrient content, organic gardening, making really nourishing, enriching meals. I'm definitely a self-described foodie. But whenever we have kind of rigid rules or expectations around food, it can create disordered eating. And also I think folks can artificially construct rules around food purity, around the cleanness of our eating in order to justify their orthorexia. So I saw a lot of this in crunchy circles, and it really upset me because I saw folks foisting what I thought were orthorexic diets onto their kids. Not just the Jimmy can't eat processed foods. I don't want him to have Cheetos and Snickers, but some really pathological behavior of I can only eat foods grown under certain conditions. My naturopath did some really sketchy food sensitivity test, which has been thoroughly debunked, but I don't want to look at that. That says that I'm now sensitive to this huge list of foods. I have to eat this very restrictive diet. And since I can't have these contaminants in my household, I need to also feed that same limited diet to my kids. And there was also a lot of if I feed my kid the right diet, then their autism will go away. Someone even suggested to me that a restrictive diet would help my child's dyslexia. I saw moms saying they were allergic to all foods except plain yogurt and chicken breast, and then posting loads of body checking photos where they wanted other folks to reinforce how skinny they were. So So when there's an emphasis on pure eating, on goodness, on purity, it's really easy to see how that tips into white supremacy. It's not a huge leap from my food needs to be pure and clean. My thoughts about lots of things revolve around purity and cleanness. There's a lot of that in the vegan community as well. Obviously, I'm an omnivore, so, take what I say with a grain of salt. But I see a lot of like the limiting super restriction of diet around pure and righteous choices, also getting really conflated with a lot of body checking and being really skinny. And there are folks in my comments who are in the vegan community who talk about how orthorexia is pretty rampant. And being a vegan can just be a way to cloak your disordered eating and feel really righteous about doing it. And the crunchy to alt-right pipeline, the veganism to white supremacy pipeline, those are swift and they funnel a lot of people. And when we as women are fixated on the goodness, the pureness, the cleanness of our eating, and that is coupled with our body image and a need to make ourselves smaller. My German grandma used to call it reducing. I need to focus on reducing. Our focus, our energy is on those things instead of living our lives. We are weaker, we are more tired, our energy, our bandwidth is given up. Creating these elaborate food rules to shrink our bodies, to make us weaker, more tired, malnourished, easier to control. Thinness, delicateness, weakness, being a damsel in distress. Those are all beauty standards of white supremacy. You should go watch my whole Damsels in Distress playlist on my main channel. I don't know. I would love your opinion here because I see the crunchy to alt-right pipeline, the vegan to white supremacy pipeline, both harnessing orthorexia, both harnessing thinness as tools to funnel women that way and then make us weaker and easier to control. White supremacy and the patriarchy, they love to work together. And let's just add capitalism into that mix as well. Selling us, diet plans, diet supplements, exercise regimens, gym routines, bad diet books, all kinds of ridiculously expensive, clean, pure foods. All of those things work together. And I know as a permaculturist, I'm always looking for the connection in everything. And I just see all of these things being tied in together. I think those of us on the left have been relatively ignorant, maybe more relatively naive about the ways that the alt-right has been really savvy at controlling and radicalizing people in fringe spaces. They have been sinking their tendrils in, entwining those filaments in all of those subcultures and sucking people to their side, indoctrinating them, radicalizing them, making them easier to control. And we have had no game. We've had no counter game. As I said in another video, the alt-right, they've had a long game and we've had none. And I think we need to get wise to these patterns, to these dynamics, and figure out how to address them. I've been in vegan groups since they became a thing on the Face app. It's a lot of white, racist, right-wing conservative, crunchy cuckoos. No hate to my awesome fellow vegans. Tiana, thank you for saying this because whenever I talk about vegan activism and its problems of white supremacy and ecofascism, some contingent of mostly white, privileged Western vegans lose their minds at me in the comments. As I have said many, many times before, I have no problem and fully support anybody's personal choice not to consume animal products. Your food choices, your choice of what to put on your body are deeply personal, and I absolutely respect those. But just like there is a crunchy to alt-right pipeline, there is a vegan to white supremacy pipeline. And this is probably a longer video for another time, but I would argue as well that the orthorexia that is common in the vegan community and also incredibly common in the crunchy mom community primes people for slipping down the alt-right pipeline because disordered eating and skinny culture are tools of white supremacy. Okay, I was talking about the crunchy to alt-right pipeline and someone left this comment on there. I saw the same thing with the crystals astrology psychic crowd. They'd start out claiming to be a Buddhist or just spiritual and then get sucked into rapture prophecy stuff and go full evangelical. Yep. And I saw this actually in the radical unschooling groups, right? So I talk a lot about unschooling on my main page. We've been unschoolers for a long time, but I cannot stomach the radical unschooling groups because they are full of conspiracy theorists and alt-right nonsense. While most unschoolers are very progressive and left-leaning, and most of them are secular humanist or atheist, you can tell I have evangelical holdover language because I said secular humanist instead of just humanist. Sorry about that. I think the alt-right has been extremely effective at harnessing these groups of people who probably were, and for a long time, maybe far more left-leaning, and propagandizing, indoctrinating them, and sending them down the alt-right pipeline. Folks who are really seeking for a sense of belonging know that they don't fit in regular society and want to have that community that they're a part of. We know folks who get indoctrinated into the alt-right often feel lonely and are longing for community and belonging, which makes them susceptible to groupthink. I think a lot of these folks are as well, right? We see the problems with capitalism. We see so many injustices in our society. We know that the way things are is not how they should be. We see corruption both in the government and in corporate we see government corruption. We see corporate corruption. We know that our quality of life is less than we should be, and we look for alternative ways of living. I think all of us in these spheres are susceptible to conspiracy theories, and those conspiracy theories very quickly funnel people into the alt-right. In the radical unschoolers group, the big thing was the ancient aliens conspiracy. I have watched that particular conspiracy theory radicalize a number of my crunchy friends and unschooling friends, mom friends, to the alt-right. And it's unfortunate that the right has been really effective at reaching these groups on the margins, especially the white margins, for 20, 30 years. They have been playing a long game, and we have not.